Ever think about this? Like how helping someone else, just reaching out, could give you a deeper sense of calm than, an hour of meditation?
Interesting.
What if, and this is kind of wild, but what if when you're truly there for another person, it's actually lighting up the same parts of your brain as like a major spiritual moment?
Yeah.
And maybe, just maybe, the real key to growing, personally and spiritually isn't always about introspection, looking inwards, but it's about giving.
Yeah.
Like, could one simple act of kindness, like a pebble in a pond, create ripples not just out there, but also within you?
Welcome to the Quantum Soul channel, everybody.
And welcome to this deep dive. We've got some fascinating stuff to share with you today, pulled from a bunch of sources, all looking at a really powerful concept: service as a spiritual path.
Exactly.
Our mission today, basically, is to unpack this whole idea, see how helping others can actually be like rocket fuel for your own growth,
Yeah.
personal and spiritual. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, if by looking outward, you might actually find something incredibly profound about yourself.
It really does. And to kick things off, let's bring in some science. It's fascinating that a recent study from Harvard, no less, found that people who are actively involved in service actually report similar levels of well-being compared to those who meditate regularly.
Wow, that's a pretty interesting connection.
All right.
It really makes you think about well-being in a different light, doesn't it? Like maybe it's not just about individual happiness, but it's actually woven into our connections with others.
Absolutely.
Almost like giving creates this feedback loop, a positive one, where both the person receiving and the person giving benefit in a really big way.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
kind of like planting a seed of joy, and it ends up blossoming in both directions.
Beautiful analogy. And biologically speaking, something pretty fundamental seems to be going on too. When we help others, our brains release oxytocin, which is often called the love hormone, because it plays such a crucial role in those feelings of connection and social bonding. So it's almost like we're wired on a neurological level to be rewarded for those acts of compassion and kindness.
That's so interesting.
Makes you think, right? Could this be part of our inherent design, like a biological nudge towards connection, which could even be considered like a key to unlocking a deeper spiritual understanding?
I love that. It's amazing how science is starting to reflect some really ancient ideas. Our sources also dive into how different cultures and philosophies, throughout history have seen this act of serving others. For example, in ancient Egypt, service to the community and to the pharaoh, who was seen as this link to the divine, was considered like a crucial bridge to the realm of the gods.
Right, service wasn't just some social duty. It was deeply, deeply spiritual. And we look at the ancient Greeks, they had this concept of arete, which basically encompassed moral excellence and virtue. But it wasn't just about lofty ideals. It was about how people contributed to their community, how they showed their excellence through service.
So this whole idea of service as something meaningful, it's not new, is it? It seems to be this recurring thread through human history.
Exactly, exactly.
Which makes you ask, how can we define service as a spiritual path in a way that speaks to us today? Based on what we've gathered, it seems to be about that conscious choice to help others without any strings attached. It's about cultivating those core human qualities.
Yeah.
Compassion, that ability to truly feel someone else's suffering. Empathy, to step into their shoes, see the world through their eyes.
And even unconditional love, accepting others without judgment.
Exactly, and weaving intention and care into everything we do, even the smallest actions, turning them into a kind of silent prayer,
Beautiful. So, could this practice, this selfless service, be a key to understanding something deeper about ourselves, about our existence? It's definitely intriguing. If you think back to those ancient civilizations, the Egyptians with their monumental temples, built as acts of service to their gods, the Greek philosophers dedicating their lives to pursuing and sharing knowledge, there was this underlying current. Contributing to something bigger than yourself, that's the path to the divine. That's how you find purpose.
It really does feel like we're rediscovering that fundamental connection in our modern times.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that it doesn't have to be these grand, huge gestures. Our sources make it clear that service as a spiritual path can take so many forms.
Right.
Like volunteering your time to a cause that speaks to you, those everyday acts of kindness that brighten someone's day, or just offering genuine support when someone's going through a tough time.
It's all about the intention behind the action.
Absolutely. And practicing this consistently, this service, it can be transformative. By shifting our focus outwards to the needs of others, we naturally start to cultivate those qualities we've been talking about, like compassion and empathy.
It broadens our perspective, helps us see beyond ourselves, and it can give us that deeper sense of meaning and purpose, which so many people are searching for.
Now, our sources introduce us to this fascinating guy named Neil, a psychologist. Apparently, he believed that service was like essential to his own spiritual journey, and that it specifically helped him become more compassionate and empathetic through his work with his patients.
Yeah, Neil's story is really interesting because he seemed to integrate his professional life with his spirituality. Our sources suggest that by helping others work through their own inner struggles, he actually gained a deeper understanding of his own challenges. It's like this reciprocal relationship. The more you give, the more insight you receive.
Right, it's like by helping others light up their path, you end up illuminating your own as well.
Beautiful, yeah.
And it goes even deeper than that. Our sources suggest that Neil experienced this profound sense of connection, almost like a connection to the divine, through his acts of service. It's that feeling of unity, of harmony, that can come when you move beyond your own ego and focus on the well-being of others.
Absolutely. When your actions are truly selfless, it creates this incredible sense of interconnectedness, like you're tapping into something universal, a flow, being part of something way bigger and more meaningful than just your individual life.
Right.
It's a feeling of belonging that goes beyond the everyday.
So for you listening, this brings up a big question. How can you explore this idea of service in your own life? And maybe Neil's experience can inspire you as you think about that.
Great point. And now's the perfect time to dive a little deeper into Neil's story. He wasn't just a psychologist in the traditional sense. He was, as our sources describe him, a channel of energetic healing inspired by shamanic traditions. He saw his work, his service, as tuning into the frequency of cosmic love.
Wow.
Right, there's a really profound energetic dimension to his interactions.
It sounds like it. It's as if every conversation, every moment he spent with a client became something more than just a clinical exchange. The sources describe them as silent rituals, and his act of listening as an invisible drumbeat, suggesting this deep, energetic connection he had with the people he was helping.
What's fascinating is how Neil's approach seems to bridge this gap between, conventional psychology and more holistic ways of looking at well-being. Research actually shows that empathetic listening can lead to changes in brain patterns.
That's interesting.
But Neil went further, believing his work also impacted people's energetic fields, suggesting a deeper level of healing.
It's incredible to think about the potential we all have to connect on those levels. If Neil could discover this capacity for healing through his work, imagine what could happen if we all approached our interactions, our service, with that kind of openness and intention.
Powerful thought, right? The sources really highlight Neil's dedication to service, not just through therapy, but through these energy healing techniques rooted in ancient shamanic wisdom. It was about the interconnectedness of our energy with the energy of the universe, and he saw service as a primary way to channel that healing energy.
You know that analogy our sources use about service being like an antenna? That's so powerful. The idea that when we dedicate ourselves to helping others, we're tuning our frequency to love and compassion, and that amplifies our ability to heal and transform ourselves in the world. It makes you wonder if Neil discovered a truth about connection that science is just starting to catch up with.
It definitely points to a deeper level of interconnectedness. And as our sources point out, Neil's story isn't unique. There are so many people who found this transformative power of service.
Absolutely. Have you ever thought about how someone can take their purpose, their passions, and weave them into helping others, and in that process actually transform their own life? We'll get ready to go deeper into Neil's journey because it's a beautiful example of how his work became this incredible catalyst for his own growth and evolution.
What's really valuable here is the potential for you, the listener, to learn from Neil's experience. Like, what if you could take those core principles he embodied and apply them in your own life? What if you could use service to cultivate more compassion and empathy?
It opens up this whole idea that service isn't just something we do for others, it's a path for our own transformation.
Yeah.
Our sources say that initially, Neil was driven by a desire to help others overcome their challenges, to find their purpose. And he saw this service as crucial for his own growth, using his skills to help people understand their emotions, thoughts, behaviors.
Yeah.
And his approach to therapy was interesting. By creating a safe, non-judgmental space, he was already engaging in a profound act of service. He believed in the power of truly listening, understanding another human being as a way to nurture compassion and empathy. It's about creating that connection where someone feels truly seen and heard.
Absolutely. And beyond that, he incorporated energy healing techniques, helping people not just understand their issues intellectually, but also find a deeper sense of peace and emotional balance. He saw this as another form of service, one that could foster a connection to something beyond the physical, helping people overcome trauma and discover their own path.
And what's key is that Neil didn't just see service as a one-way street. He found that by helping others, he gained valuable insights into his own struggles. He even found answers to his own questions. He viewed service as this ongoing spiritual practice that fueled his own evolution.
Right.
So as you're listening to this, think about it. How can you bring more acts of service into your own life? How can Neil's dedication to helping others inspire you to be more compassionate and empathetic?
It's a great point. And it leads us perfectly into recognizing that Neil's story isn't isolated. There are so many inspiring stories of people who found deep meaning and transformation through their commitment to serving others. It makes you wonder, what if every act of service created ripples, like a wave expanding throughout the universe with consequences far beyond what we can see?
It makes you think about Einstein's idea of interconnected forces, right? Maybe service, reaching out with kindness, is a tangible expression of that interconnectedness, a thread of compassion that ties us all together.
It's a beautiful thought. Our sources give us glimpses of these inspiring individuals. Maria, who found purpose volunteering at a shelter. John, a veteran who found healing by serving fellow veterans. Sarah, a student who found connection and rebuilt her sense of self by building homes for those in need. And David, a businessman who found true meaning through philanthropy.
It's powerful, isn't it? When we help someone, are we tapping into something deeper about who we are?
It really makes you think. And our sources give us a little more insight into these stories. Maria, for example, was a single mother with her own challenges, but found that volunteering at a shelter not only helped others, but gave her own life a renewed sense of purpose. It became her spiritual practice.
And John, the veteran, he was struggling with the aftermath of his experiences. But dedicating himself to supporting other veterans who had gone through similar things, that became his path to healing.
Sarah, the student, she felt disconnected. But by getting involved in building homes for those in need, she found a sense of belonging and purpose. That hands-on act of service became her spiritual practice.
And then there's David, the businessman. He had achieved success, but felt empty. And by shifting his focus from wealth to giving back to philanthropy, he finally found meaning. Service became his way to grow and evolve.
And what's really interesting here is the underlying connection between these stories. Our sources mention Einstein's unified field theory, the idea that all forces in the universe are interconnected. Could service be a manifestation of that, like an invisible link that unites us all?
It really makes you think about that wave analogy. Every act of service, no matter how small, it sends ripples out, transforming lives, strengthening the fabric of our reality, creating a more just and compassionate world. It makes you wonder if we're all building a better future, one act of service at a time.
It's inspiring.
Yeah.
And it brings up the question of how we cultivate the very things that drive this kind of action: compassion and empathy.
Absolutely. Our sources seem to suggest that the answer might be simpler than we think, that these aren't traits you're born with or without, but capacities that can be developed, like training a muscle.
Interesting.
Have you ever thought about how these stories of transformation through service can inspire you to do the same? They really show the power of service as a spiritual path, don't they?
Absolutely.
What if you could learn from Maria, John, Sarah, and David and use their experiences as a guide to bring more service into your own life? And through that, tap into that transformative power for yourself.
Powerful thought.
It all circles back to cultivating compassion and empathy, doesn't it? Our sources provide a really interesting perspective here, using both biological and metaphorical language. They say compassion isn't fixed. It can be developed, like strengthening a muscle through exercise. Studies on practices like loving kindness meditation have shown actual growth in areas of the brain linked to empathy.
That's amazing.
Isn't it? It means our capacity for love and compassion is neuroplastic. It can change and grow with practice.
That's really empowering, and I love that analogy our sources use of the heart as a garden. Imagine your heart is fertile ground, and every act of service, every moment of kindness is like watering that garden.
Right.
And as you nurture it consistently, you start to see the beautiful blossoms of meaning and purpose emerge.
So now that the ground is prepared, what seeds of service will you plant in your own life?
That's a great question, and it leads to a direct question for you, the listener. Have you ever thought about how service can help you develop those spiritual qualities, like compassion and empathy?
Because it seems like there's a direct link, right? When we choose to step outside of ourselves and focus on the well-being of another person, we're engaging that capacity for understanding and connection.
Absolutely. And as our sources point out, in doing so, we naturally start to put ourselves in their shoes. We understand their needs, their feelings, their perspectives, and that direct experience, that reaching out to help, fosters deeper understanding, a stronger connection, which are the very roots of compassion and empathy.
And our sources bring back Neil's experience here. He used his work, both therapy and the energy healing, to not only help people deal with their immediate challenges, but also to guide them towards a deeper understanding of their emotions, leading to greater inner peace. He believed service was essential for developing compassion and empathy, both in himself and in others.
Right.
And it's not just Neil's experience. Those inspiring stories we talked about earlier, Maria, John, Sarah, David, they all illustrate this principle in action. Through their service, they cultivated deeper compassion and empathy, not just for those they helped, but likely for humanity as a whole.
Absolutely.
Our sources highlight how important these qualities are for our own growth. Compassion and empathy make us more attuned to others' needs, allowing us to provide better support. It's a positive cycle that benefits everyone.
It truly is. And as Neil believed, engaging in service is a spiritual practice for developing these qualities, leading to personal and spiritual fulfillment.
Yeah.
It's about opening your heart to the experiences of others.
And now we get to the practical side of all this. Our sources have this really creative call to action, encouraging you to think about your own service project. Maybe it's planting trees, helping those in need, or just listening with genuine care. They want you to see yourself as an artist. The world is your canvas, each act of service a brushstroke. So the question is, what kind of masterpiece will you create?
I love that. And it doesn't have to be some huge, overwhelming project. Our sources give us so many practical examples of service that we can weave into our lives, like intentionally seeking out volunteer opportunities with an organization that aligns with your values.
Right.
Or incorporating small acts of kindness into your routine, a helping hand, a kind word, a smile. Consciously offer emotional support to people in your life who might be struggling.
And be thoughtful about where you donate your resources, your time, your money, your skills. And if you have skills in Reiki or other forms of energy healing, explore using those to help others find peace and well-being.
What if you feel like you don't know where to start, or that you are not naturally compassionate? Well, our sources address that, reminding us that compassion and empathy are the keys to service. By putting ourselves in someone else's shoes, we can understand their needs and act with more kindness and love.
It all comes back to that idea of training compassion like a muscle. And the research on loving kindness meditation shows that it's possible to increase compassion significantly. It means it's not just a passive emotion, it's a skill you can develop.
Right. And that heart as a garden analogy comes back here.
Yeah.
Your heart is the ground. Compassion and empathy are the flowers. The more you water that garden with acts of service, the more love and kindness will bloom, radiating outwards and enriching your inner world.
Beautiful. So are you ready to be a gardener of your own heart, to nurture compassion and empathy through service?
Now that you understand the power of compassion and empathy, how can you put service into practice in your life?
That's the key, right? Going from understanding to action.
Exactly. So our sources give us all these practical ideas to get started, like volunteering with an organization that resonates with you, being kind in your everyday interactions, offering support, donating to causes you care about. And if you have skills in things like Reiki, use those to help others.
Remember that analogy of the artist and the canvas. It's about seeing yourself as an active creator, crafting something meaningful through your acts of service, transforming the world in your own unique way.
So are you ready to be the artist of your own life? To paint your masterpiece of service on the canvas of the world?
Because the possibilities are endless, really. The most important thing is to find what truly resonates with you and take that first step.
And speaking of taking steps, if you're finding this deep dive into service as a spiritual path valuable, make sure to subscribe to the Quantum Soul channel so you don't miss any future deep dives on similar topics. And if you're enjoying this conversation, please hit that like button and share this video with someone you think might benefit from it. It's a small act that can make a big difference.
Absolutely. Sharing this knowledge is a form of service itself. Now let's address some questions that might have come up for you. Our sources say that the answers to life's big questions are often within you already. Service just acts as a mirror, reflecting that inner wisdom.
That's a good point. And our sources highlight some key questions we've touched on. How to start practicing service? how service develops compassion, real-world examples of transformation, and how to fit service into our busy lives.
But what's so powerful is this idea of tapping into our own inner wisdom. Ancient wisdom traditions have always recognized our capacity for love and service. It's often about quieting our minds, listening to our hearts, and trusting our intuition to guide us.
That's beautiful. And that analogy of an explorer searching for hidden treasures within themselves, that's so fitting. Your inner self is full of potential. Each question you have is a clue on the map to your true essence and purpose.
Are you ready to dive into these questions and see what we can uncover together?
Let's start with the basics. How can someone start practicing service?
Our sources suggest starting small and being intentional. Look for simple things like volunteering, doing small acts of kindness, offering support, donating, or using your skills in things like energy healing to help others.
It makes sense. And how does service actually help us develop compassion?
It seems that when we engage in service, we shift our perspective away from ourselves and try to understand the needs and feelings of another person. And that direct experience, that act of helping, cultivates a deeper awareness and connection, which are the foundation of compassion.
That's true. And what about those real-world examples of transformation?
We talked about Maria finding purpose, John finding healing, Sarah finding connection, and David finding meaning. They're proof that service can change your life and lead to fulfillment.
Powerful stories.
They are. And finally, how do we fit service into our busy lives? Our sources emphasize finding those everyday opportunities. Help a neighbor, listen to a colleague, be kind in your interactions. Small acts of service add up and make a difference.
That's a great point. And to bring it full circle, remember that analogy about being a cell in the cosmic organism of humanity?
Yes.
By serving others, we're contributing to the healing and well-being of the whole.
So what we've seen today is that service is so much more than a random act of kindness. It's a journey, a path back to ourselves, a way to connect to something bigger. By helping others, we transform ourselves and the world.
Exactly. And by offering our help, our compassion, our resources, we're not just making a difference in others' lives, but also creating change within ourselves and contributing to a better world.
It makes you think, could service be the key to the evolution of human consciousness?
What a thought.
If we look at quantum physics, where observation can influence reality, it's fascinating to think about how dedicating ourselves to service could be shaping a new reality, one based on love, compassion, and collaboration.
It's a powerful idea. And that analogy of the cosmic organism really resonates. We're all interconnected, and service is how we communicate, interact, and strengthen that whole organism, creating a healthier, more vibrant world.
So the big question is, are we ready to be agents of change?
It's a question worth pondering. As we wrap up, we encourage you to think about how you can apply these insights about service to your own life. Think about Neil's story, the other stories we've shared, and the answers we've explored.
What if you took just one idea from today and made it a part of your life? Use the principles of service to cultivate more compassion and empathy, both for others and for yourself.
Throughout this deep dive, we've looked at service as a spiritual path, explored Neil's journey, seen real-world examples of transformation, talked about compassion and empathy, and give you practical ways to incorporate service into your life.
The key takeaway is that service isn't just a good deed. It's a practice for growth and evolution. It connects us to something bigger, gives us purpose, helps us develop essential qualities, overcome challenges, and can be practiced in so many ways.
Absolutely. So we'd love to hear from you. In the comments below, tell us, what's one act of service you're inspired to do after this deep dive? Maybe share a story about a time when kindness made a difference, either for you or for someone else. How do you plan to weave more service into your daily life? What's one small thing you can do right now to bring more light into the world? And if you found value in this conversation, please share this video with someone you think might benefit from it. That's a beautiful act of service in itself. And of course, if you haven't already, subscribe to the Quantum Soul channel for more deep dives into topics like this.
Exactly. And together we can create a more compassionate, connected, and vibrant world. Remember, the journey of service is ongoing, and every step you take matters.
And for those who want to explore this further, we put together an ebook on service as a spiritual path. You can find the link in the pinned comment below.
And don't stop your journey here. You should see 2 more videos on your screen right now. Click on whichever one calls to you to continue your journey of growth and transformation.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the power of service.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you.